All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday morning, June the 4th, 2025, and we are continuing in our Torah portion this morning. We're going to be doing our Torah portion today, and then the next one's actually going to be on Friday. So tomorrow will be in Hebrews. Just a reminder, please remember to hit subscribe, to hit like if you're blessed by the teaching, and to share. And thank you for your faithfulness in giving. And just as we walk together daily, spending time in His Word, saying, God, teach me, continue to form me, precept upon precept, building me in a greater understanding of who you are and of your heart and who you've called me to be. And today we're going to be looking at, we're going through Numbers. We're entering a new portion, Naso, meaning, and he lifted, or lift up, carry. And the title of today's Daily Manna is the Nazarite, or the Nazarite vow, but the Nazarite, a dedicated decision to be different. And this is a pretty special vow that is made, and we'll get into that a little bit further in the portion today. So the book of Numbers opened up. The book of Numbers is Bamidbar, in the wilderness. And it opened up with the numbering of the tribes. Specifically, they're numbered according to the tribes to determine the number of fighting men, right? So in that initial numbering, you'll remember the Levites are not counted. And so we're told how many fighting men are in each tribe. And we're told how the tribes are to be organized, how they're to be stationed in the camp with the tabernacle at the center, right? And the Levites surrounding the tabernacle. We're told even the order when you depart camp. Here's who goes first and here's who goes last. Here's the order. And even in the middle of the departure, it's going to go. In fact, if you take a look right now, I've made it wider, a wider screen view of the camp. If you've got that on there, Antonio. I've made a wider view of the camp so that you can see. So hopefully it fills your screen better than it has been, so you can get an idea. The camp of Judah on the east, they'll go first, followed by the camp of Reuben, which is Reuben, Simeon, and Gad. They go second. Then goes the Mishkan, and we see the families of the Levites surrounding the Mishkan. And then Ephraim will go fourth, and then the camp of Dan, which is Dan, Asher, Naphtali, will go last, will go fifth. Now, if you look in the middle there, you see that what ended up happening as we continued to go through Numbers, chapters 3 and 4, is it began to say, okay, well, the Levites, there were three sons of Levi. There was Gershon, Kohath, and Merari, and so now we number the Levites, and now they're numbered according to, and they're given specific responsibilities. So and you can go off that, you can go back and look at that later if you want, but the sons of Gershon are responsible for all the tents and the curtains, the cloth stuff. The sons of Merar are responsible for the structural elements, all the heavy stuff, the poles, frames, etc. And actually, even so, the sons of Aaron, there's only two sons of Aaron left, right? There's Eleazar is the third son. The first two, Nadav and Avihu have died. So Eleazar is the third son, now the oldest, and Itamar is the fourth son. And now Itamar is in charge of Gershon, he's overseeing what the responsibilities are for the sons of Gershon and the sons of Merari, the poles, the tents, all of that. And then under the guidance of Eleazar, the third son of Aaron, who's the oldest living son, you have the sons of Kohath, who they are responsible for everything dealing with the tabernacle, with the most holy things. They are the ones who carry the ark. And so, in fact, the sons, Aaron and his sons, are to go in, and everything gets covered. Before the sons of Kohath go in to carry that, everything is to be covered. They are not to look upon it. And so I kind of tracked back even to look, and so Moses and Aaron and Aaron's sons are actually their grandfather was Kohath. So Kohath had the son Amram, and Amram was the oldest son of Kohath, and then Aaron and Moses are his sons. So these are family members, and so all of this has been laid out. And so as we stopped our last portion mid chapter 4, well, chapter 4 continues. That's where we pick up this week, and chapter 4 picks up. Now, it gave us the overall number of the Levites. Now it gives us the number of the men who are basically in their prime to serve those between the ages of 30 and 50. So chapter 4 now picks up numbering the Levite men who are able to serve between ages. So you cannot serve until age 30, and then until age 50. So that you also see that's where Yeshua's ministry started at age 30, and with good reason. So that chapter 4 picks that numbering up. After chapter 4, chapter 5 begins to deal with some things regarding purity in the camp. And a lot is dealt with. And I'm just going to touch on this very briefly in just a minute. But there's a significant section there that when you first read it, in our modern ears and thinking, we're trying to figure out what to do with it. There are instructions for how things are to be handled when it's suspected that a wife has been unfaithful to her husband, but there's no proof of it. Nobody saw anything, but he is suspicious of it. Then what do you do there? And that's going to be dealt with. Then number 6 moves on to discussing the Nazarite vow, which is where we'll really focus today. But and then number 7 really is the dedication. It's 89 verses, but it's a lot of repetition in terms of the offerings that are brought. 12 days of dedication of the tabernacle. So number 7 actually takes us back a month. Right, so Numbers chapter 1 began in the first day of the second month after coming out of Egypt. Number 7 backs us up to the first day of the first month. And number 7 ends this way. When Moses entered the tent of meeting to speak with Adonai, he heard the voice speaking to him from above the atonement cover atop the ark of the testimony between the cherubim. So he spoke with him. So now at this point, the Lord is speaking to Moses in the tent of meeting. He had been speaking to him on Sinai. We saw in the opening of Leviticus, he spoke to him from the tent of meeting. And there is a difference made there, though it could mean the same thing. But now at the end of chapter 7, he's speaking in the tent of meeting. And 2 weeks later, in the tent of meeting, he tells Moses, number them. And it takes us back, Numbers 1 through 5. So we're going to look at Numbers chapter 7 in our next Torah portion, Manna. But it's at this point that we then get the numbering a couple weeks later or a month later. So just quickly to summarize chapter 5, here's the deal. Well, let's read it. Numbers 5:11 through 14. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, suppose some man's wife goes astray or turns aside and is unfaithful to him, and another man has sexual relations with her, but it is hidden from her husband's eyes, and her impurity is not detected. Yet there was no witness against her, and she was not caught in the act. And then a spirit of jealousy overcomes him, and he is jealous or suspicious, but it uses the same word, kine, jealous of his wife when she is impure. Or a spirit of jealousy overcomes him, and he is jealous or suspects his wife, yet she is not impure." Like there's no evidence, even if there's no evidence, but he's got this jealousy. What do you do? What happens then? And so in much of the ancient world, and really not so ancient world, a jealous man might take matters into his own hands. Often there were what you might call a trial by ordeal, but it was an unjust trial. Generally, it would assume guilt. You were guilty until proven innocent. And so the way to be proven innocent in a lot of these things in different cultures would require almost something miraculous. The woman would have to put her hand in boiling water and it come out untouched, otherwise she was guilty. Well, or she would have to grab, an iron that was in the fire and it not burn her, and that would prove her not guilty. Well, that was all stacked against her from the beginning. But so this, what we see here, in which I'll summarize in a minute, or talk through in Leviticus 5, it on one level it's similar in that it's a visual test to determine whether his jealousy is justified, because there's no evidence or proof. So it could be similar to trial by ordeal, but it's very different in a lot of different ways. So if she's been unfaithful and there's no witness, or if he suspects that she is, if he's jealous, then he has to take her to the priest, right? And so it says that he's going to come, he's going to bring a barley offering, a grain offering, and he's not bringing it, you're not putting oil on it, you're not putting incense with it, there's no flavor added to this offering. This is an offering concerning the jealousy and or her unfaithfulness. It's a reminder that draws attention to iniquity. And so he brings this barley offering, and then the priest takes water, holy water. It's water that would be from the holy place, from the mikdash, and he then takes dust from the tabernacle, from the holy place, from the ground, and he puts that in the water. Her hair is let down, so there is a humility here. So again, we don't know if she's guilty or not, but all of this is taking place, and her hair is let down, and she holds her palms, in her palms, the grain offering, this reminder offering, while the priest holds in his hands these bitter waters. It then calls this bitter water that is basically dirt from the floor in the tabernacle. And again, the tabernacle in the wilderness is being set down wherever, but where it is, the presence of the Lord is there. It's sanctified. Dirt goes into the water, and then an oath is taken, basically saying, if you've not been unfaithful, may you be immune from the effects of this bitter water. If you have, then the Lord will cause your loins or your hips to waste away, to fall, and your belly to swell. Effectively, what we'll see later is you become barren. So then she says, amen, amen, I agree to this. And then he's to write this curse and all of this on a scroll, and the scroll is washed in the bitter waters. And then he takes the grain offering from her hands, offers it as a wave offering before the Lord, and then burns it up on the altar in smoke on the altar. And then she is to drink the water. So it's very strange to us, very like what's happening. If she has negative effects from the water, then she's guilty. If there are no effects, then she's free from guilt. She'll be able to have children and so forth. It's a challenging section to our modern ears that can at first seem relatively primitive. But what we can see in it, there are a number of inbuilt protective devices that are not present in what those trial by ordeal that you saw in the ancient and medieval world. First of all, this is a visual demonstration. So, both the water and the dirt, the dust come from the tabernacle. Two ingredients came from a holy place. Everything depended on whether she was holy or unholy, guilty or guiltless. And the holy meets the unholy, right? And judgment is inevitable. If she's guiltless and she encounters the holy, then harmony prevails and she is vindicated. Now, this is not simply scientific. We don't actually have any record in the Torah. There are some scholars that say, hey, well, maybe this just happened during the wilderness wanderings. There's no record of this actually being done. But it's not simply scientific, because it's the same dirt, it's the same water, and the effect is whether you're guilty or not guilty. So indeed, it is supernatural. It's a supernatural thing. And what you see now, if you think about, because I'm going through it, I'm wondering, well, why didn't they just go and the word of the Lord come forth? And why do you go through all of this ritual why doesn't it's just the word of the Lord? Well, because that would be a prophetic thing. The work of the prophets is verbal in nature, is like radio. It's oral in nature, speaking forth the word of God. The work of priests is very visual in nature. It's very, you see it. It's like television. You see what's happening. So this would be a visual vindication. I mean, this has happened, and this is, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, it's all exposed, the fact that she's brought to the priest. This is very public. But either there's going to be, either he was wrong or she was wrong. I mean, either he's jealous and now that can be, she could say all day long, I didn't do it. And if he can't get over it, he's not taking it into his own hands. So that's one issue that makes it different. In the ancient world, in the modern world, people would take it into their own hands, and you're at the mercy of him. Secondly, it's safe. It's just dust and water. That cannot be compared. Shoot, when I was a kid, I remember in Italy when I was little, we visited Italy, and I had a cousin there that somehow, I don't know if I was a pushover then or what, but I remember him making me eat dirt. Yay, happy cousin. I think we've grown up by now, but I made it, And so dirt and water, you're going to be generally okay. This is not like those other ordeal patterns that were prevalent at the time, right? Hand in boiling water, grabbing a red hot instrument. And then this didn't begin with an assumption of guilt. It was neutral. The dust in the water, and this is neutral. And it was controlled. It was not simply left in the hands of the husband. It was brought to a third party. It was brought to the priest. And now, in our modern society, you might ask, well, why is the suspected adultery ritual only for the woman? Because it seems to us that it would be unfair. What if the wife suspects her husband of illicit sexual activity? Well, in the ancient world, first of all, legal matters were normally administered by men. And so women came under the legal protection and jurisdiction of men. So men initiated marriage and divorce proceedings, and they initiated charges of sexual misconduct. So women were vulnerable to deadly suspicion of marital infidelity. It wasn't a two-way street. Men were able to, at that time, have concubines. They could have multiple wives. It would only be for the man. It was an issue if it was someone else's wife. So to protect innocent but suspected women from what would be an inevitable bias of a male-dominated trial, God removes their fates from human jurisdiction. Right? He can be fair because he knows all the facts. So the suspected adulteress, right? This is really the only instance in all of ancient Israelites' legal proceedings in which the Lord himself promises to judge and render the verdict himself in a supernatural way, right? He is this is the only place that it's basically the supreme court of the Lord, where he says, I will render verdict on him. So that right to a Supreme Court trial is a right that is given only to women who are accused of such a thing. So if God himself clears the woman of suspicion through this very stringent trial, then her husband can rest assured that she has been faithful, has nothing to hide. So that's, maybe I spent longer on that, but I really spent a lot of time looking at it, trying to understand it, because it really initially struck me like I didn't know exactly what to do with it, but I can't just kind of blow past it. But it's where the Lord himself intervenes in this. Now, Numbers 6 introduces us to the Nazarite vow. So in Leviticus, the Levitical functions have all been outlined. And now the general population of the other 12 tribes is provided a means for voluntary dedication and devotion and service to the Lord. And And so there are parallels to the holiness that is portrayed as distinctive in the priestly regulations that are now those from the tribes are given the opportunity to become a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. And so here the Lord lays out the fact that here are the means for any Israelite. Now this is what's revolutionary. Any Israelite, both male and female, could dedicate themselves in service to the Lord. And it's specifically laid out. Anyone, regardless of your gender, regardless of your tribe, regardless of your title, you could volunteer to step into this a decision to be different, a deeper place of dedication. God made a way for ordinary people to express extraordinary devotion. Like you've willingly chosen to be dedicated to the Lord. Look at Numbers chapter 6, beginning in verse 1. Again, Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, any man or woman who desires to vow a Nazarite vow to be separate for Adonai." Let's just pause right there. So in Hebrew, the word nazar, it means to dedicate. It speaks to a total dedication. So it can include the idea of forsaking all else, deserting that which is other, and it can include the idea of fasting. The crown upon the high priest's head was called a nazar, that's speaking to that dedication. The literal translation here says, if a man or a woman, here's the thing, where it says who desires to vow, it uses the word pele, right? So Pele is when we read about, and his name will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Prince of Peace. That word wonderful is Pele, extraordinary, right? This is almost supernatural, as it were. But there's an extraordinary vow here. This is an extraordinary vow. So if a man or a woman extraordinarily makes a vow of Nazir for the Nazir to Adonai, a vow of dedication for dedication to Adonai. So here in our text, to be separate is the word Nazir. It's in Hebrew, you're going to just see this word Nazir a lot, where we're going to in English see consecrate and separate. But it's just the same word Nazir, dedicate over and over. And again, so this is dedication for men and women. No distinction is made. So that just gives you something, just especially on the heels of what we just looked at, in terms of, how does God feel about women? Well, he gives women the extraordinary right to being the only ones who can be vindicated by his Supreme Court, as it were. And secondly, now he calls them into voluntary dedication. This is an extraordinary vow, and with rare exception, it is a voluntary dedication. The next verses list the three specific commitments made during this time. So number one, he or she doesn't have grape anything of any kind. Like in Bible school, when I would read about the Nazarite vow, I would always talk about, no alcohol. Well, the command is don't even get near grapes or raisins. Don't touch the seeds or the skins. Not just fermented drink. It includes that, but it expands. You're not drinking grape juice, whether it's fresh. You're not drinking fermented grape juice, period. So you're staying away from the fruit of the vine, full stop. From the vine, full stop. Secondly, no cutting of your hair or shaving during this time. You don't let the razor touch your head. And third, avoid contact with the dead. So let's look. Speak to Bnei Israel and say to them, any man or woman who makes the extraordinary vow of dedication to be dedicated to Adonai, that's what it says, is to abstain, is to be dedicated from wine and any other fermented drink. He is not a strong drink, it says. It's he or she, because it's man or woman, is not to drink. Here it says any vinegar made from wine or any fermented drink. The word in Hebrew there, in both cases, vinegar and fermented drink, is the word chometz, like chametz, yeast, right? Fermented. So it is fermented, so it has to do with any of that. No drink that is has chametz in it. So you have even this imagery, when we say to be free from leaven, free from chametz, that is at work here. But there is also this image of being almost above reproach. It's not just about no alcohol here. It says you can't even have all drink from the vine. He or she is not to drink any grape juice or eat grapes or raisins, right? You can't eat the living grapes or the dried up grapes. He or she is not to eat. Verse 4, all during his or her days as a Nazir of their dedication, he or she is not to eat anything from the grapevine, not seeds or skins. All the duration of his or her dedication vow, Nazarite vow, no razor is to come upon his or her head, which is obviously going to be more noticeable on a man than on a woman, until the time of his Nazir, his consecration, his Nazir, the fullness of his consecration days, dedication days is complete, is full. He or she is to be kadosh, holy, and the hair of his head is to grow long. All the days of his or her Nazir, dedication to Adonai, he or she is not to go near a dead body. And then it's, just in case you're wondering, and this gets pretty stringent, even if his father, mother, brother, or sister should die, he is not to make himself unclean, because his Nazir, his consecration to God, is upon his head. All the days of his Nazir, of his separation, he is to be holy, kadosh, for the Lord, consecrated, holy to the Lord. So even the stringency of this command, right, extending to where you can't touch a dead body, even if it's your family, mother, father, sister, brother, is comparable only to what's really required of the high priest back in Leviticus 21. So generally, this Nazir, this dedication, is a dedication for a period of time. It's not a set period. It's a period that is decided probably upon in the vow. There's at least one famous instance, in which someone is set apart as a Nazir, as a dedicated one for his whole life, and is chosen in that way, not by his parents, but his parents are told by the Lord. Of course, that's Samson. Judges 13, verse 2, now there was a certain man from Zorah, from a Danite clan, right? So this is sons of Dan. This is not a Levite, not a son of Judah, son of Dan, whose name was Manoah. His wife was barren and bore no children. Then the angel of Adonai appeared to the woman and said to her, behold, now you are barren and have not borne children, but you will conceive and bear a son. Now therefore be careful not to drink wine or strong drink or eat any unclean thing, for behold, you will conceive and bear a son. Let no razor come upon his head, for the boy will be a Nazir to God from the womb. He will begin to deliver Israel from the hand of the Philistines. I was looking at this, and I was actually surprised where it says he will begin to deliver. The word that's translated here, begin, is yachal, which has to do with being pierced or slain. So the literal translation here actually would be more akin to what happens at the end of his life, or he will be slain or pierced, slain for the salvation, the Hoshea, the deliverance of Israel from the hand of the Philistines. And says, verse 6 says, then the woman came and told her husband, saying, a man of God came to me, and his appearance was like the appearance of the angel of God. Nora me'od, it was very awesome greatly. But I did not ask him where he was from, nor did he tell me his name. He said to me, behold, you will conceive and bear a son, so drink no wine or strong drink, and eat nothing unclean, for the child will be a dedicated one, a Nazir to God from the womb to the day of his death. Right? So now, when you go through the story of Samson, we see it relates here. He's chosen almost like a priest is chosen, where this is not something he chose, but it was something that he was called to, which he seems to have at some point begun to resist. He gradually breaks his vow as he comes in contact with the carcass of a lion. He participates in drinking feasts in Judges 14 with the Philistines. He, of course, famously allows his hair to be cut by Delilah. So we have, of course, Samson is the most famous that of Nazarites. Joseph is actually named as a Nazir, who is one dedicated, it's set apart from his brothers. We read in the blessing of Genesis 49:26 says, "The blessings of your father surpass the blessings of ancient mountains, the desire of the everlasting hills. May they be upon Joseph's head, upon the crown of the one Nazir Achayiv, dedicated from his brothers, set apart from his brothers." So we see he's called a dedicated one. Samuel is not explicitly called a Nazarite, but his mother Hannah dedicated him with a vow that suggests a Nazarite vow. If you look at 1 Samuel 1:11, she made a vow and said, "Adonai Tzevaot, if you will indeed look upon the affliction of your handmaid, remember me and don't forget your handmaid, but grant your handmaid a son, then I will give him to Adonai all the days of his life, and no razor will ever touch his head." Right? So this was a dedication. It was an extraordinary dedication, a special dedication. So the Nazir, the dedication, was one where it was chosen. You decided you wanted to be a part. It's described as a special vow, extraordinary vow. No other provision in Israel quite like it. Because, for instance, the prohibition about contact with a dead body, well, that applied to everyone in the camp. And then the priests are not to shave their heads, were not allowed to drink wine if they were serving in the tabernacle. But although they were forbidden to have close contact with a corpse, the priests were allowed to touch the body of a close relative who died. But all of these stipulations brought together in the vows of a dedicated Nazir, a dedicated one, were unique. And everything about the Nazir, the dedicated one, was visible, right? No grapes, fruit of the vine, when everyone's having fruit of the vine. No razor, that's visible. No contact with death at all. It was not a hidden commitment. It shaped how you ate, how you looked, how you lived. It made you stand out in our culture where faith is often very private. The dedicated one, the commitment of the dedicated one, reminds us that God calls us to still be a display of being dedicated to Him. It's, again, not a coincidence that the Nazir's long hair and the high priest's crown and his oil are called Nazir, dedicated. And these were outward symbols of the being set apart that were expected of the high priest and the dedicated one here. Again, it was voluntary and extraordinary in that it was for a man or a woman who wants to make that special vow. It was personal. It was public. And it was costly. Right? To not be able, he must be holy until the period of his separation to the Lord is over, till his dedication time is over. Only the high priest had anything close to what was expected of the Nazir regarding not being able to be associated with the death of his own family. In normal circumstances, the vow was temporary. There's when the period of his separation is over. Now, there are then, when we go further down in the passage, if the Nazir becomes contaminated by someone dies and there was nothing he could do about it, well then normally you would be rendered unclean for 7 days, and then there was a ritual purification of priests. But to rededicate a Nazir, there was a way, but he had to first shave his head, offer 2 small birds as sin and burnt offerings, consecration of the head and rededication, offering a lamb as a guilt offering, and then the 7th day, the cleansing process began with the shaving of the hair, and then it all began again. So it all began over. If he was even the vow began again because of the defilement. If they were accidentally in touch with the original vow has been annulled and must be completely begun again. And so it goes through all of that. And then in Numbers 6:21, it says, "This is the Torah, the instructions regarding the Nazir, the dedicated one, who vows his offering, who vows his approaching." This is his offering is his sacrifice, but it's his karbanu, his karban, his karav is to draw near, his approaching, that he makes his vow to be near to Adonai with regard to his consecration, his nazir, his dedication. Besides, separate to what he can afford, he must fulfill the vow he has made in accordance with the instruction of his nazar. And so we actually see something similar in the book of Acts. In Acts 21, Paul is describing his journey back to Jerusalem, and Paul has been maligned. There are people that are saying things about him, and so we see then that Luke describes a vow that Paul and 4 other men had taken that involved purification rites, shaving the head, 7 days of cleansing, living in obedience to Torah. It says, Acts 21:17, when we arrived in Jerusalem, the brothers and sisters welcomed us gladly. On the next day, Paul went in with us, Luke writes, to Jacob. All the elders were present. After greeting Jacob and the elders, he reported to them in detail what God had done among the Gentiles through his service. And when they heard, they began glorifying God. They said, you see, brother, how many myriads there are among the Jewish people who have believed, and they are all zealous for the Torah. They've been told about you that you teach all Jewish people among Gentiles to forsake Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or to walk according to the customs. What's to be done then? No doubt they will hear that you have come. Right? So they're hearing false rumors about Paul as he's telling Gentiles. Gentiles don't have to become Jewish, but he's not telling Jews to stop being Jewish. He's not telling Jews to forsake the instructions of the Lord. He's just showing them even the fulfillment of everything in Yeshua. But these rumors have spread, and so what do? So the elders and Jacob and the elders say, verse 23, so do what we tell you. We have 4 men who have a vow on themselves. Take them and purify yourself along with them and pay their expenses so that they may shave their heads. That way, all will realize there's nothing to the things that have been told about you, but that you yourself walk in an orderly manner, keeping the Torah. So he's describing something that looks like the Nazarite vow. Even the paying of expenses would be presumably for the sacrifices and completion of the Nazarite vow. The Mishnah describes the practice of wealthy individuals paying for the vow completion requirements for poor people. So he continues on. It says, as for Gentiles who have believed, however, we have written by letter that we decided for them to abstain from what is offered to idols and from blood and from what is strangled and from immorality. So the next day, Paul took the men, purifying himself along with them. He went into the temple, announcing when the days of purification would be completed and the sacrifice would be offered for each one of them. So we see this dedication that is continuing, and that Paul himself was expressed this sort of vow of dedication. Paul, being from the tribe of Benjamin, is not of the Levites, but of the tribes, and goes through this dedication with these 4 others. So the beauty that we see, and I'll finish up here, I know I've gone long, is that just this very unique opportunity. The Lord says, hey, now if you want to make a vow to you, your desire is to be dedicated to me. You weren't born as, now, even if you weren't born as Levite, you're not going to serve in ways with the sacrifices and those kinds of things. But if your heart is to serve the Lord and to draw near to Him, He says you can do that, and it's costly. It's a privilege to serve the Lord, and it's a beautiful thing, and it's a decision that I'm committed to you, Lord. I want to commit. I want to be set apart, and even if it's for a season, to rededicate. There's a season of dedication that this involves, of saying, I want to serve the Lord. I want to give a period of time of my life in deeper dedication to the Lord. And so that's something I think that we can look to and say, but it's not to be done haphazardly. It's not to be done like where you make a vow or you make a commitment and then you back out of it when it gets uncomfortable or inconvenient, right? But you come and you say, okay, I'm yours, Lord. I'm dedicated to you. And I know it'll cost me, and I know I'll look different, and there are things I won't be able to partake in, but you're more important. And so I set all of that aside, and I'm yours and wholly yours. And there is even where I'm walking, my desire is to be as pure as the high priest himself, And so as we can never be the high priest, the Lord himself is the one who offers the sacrifices for us. We cannot atone for our own sins. We are of a tribe that does not enable us to do that. Only the high priest is able to do that, but we can still offer ourselves following his lead in dedication to him, saying, I'm yours, Lord. Right? You're a holy nation, a royal priesthood. You should show forth the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his glorious light. So walk that dedication out. Say, and again, don't make it haphazardly, but say, Lord, I want to give you, as you bring that to Lord, I want to give you this season set apart for how you'll use me. Amen? All right. Well, sorry for how long I went. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.